You're doing a great job.
Aw, thank you.
Appreciate that. Hey, I've been in the business 36 years in Boeing, Northrop Grumman, United Technologies. I worked for all three for more than 10 years. Best company I ever worked for.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
The Teamsters at Amazon continue to build momentum. We just heard from a Teamster at Amazon in Kentucky. They're organizing more locations, and they have begun a strike here leading up to Christmas. And just a couple of weeks ago now, we got more Southern Amazon Teamsters when Amazon workers organized with the Teamsters in Atlanta. Let's listen to them as they announced their unionization.
Becoming a Teamster at Amazon is important to me because it shows me that I've got hundreds of thousands of other people backing me.
We just marched inside of our Amazon warehouse.
We're making billions for a corporation that has a hard time providing us enough on our paychecks to be able to make ends meet.
We just marched on the bus.
We demand better pay and real job security.
The safety.
What gets me excited about joining the Teamsters is solidarity.
Brothers and sisters in the Teamsters Union.
See people get together and create a bond.
Amazon workers in Atlanta are ready to see that change. Glad to do this work with them, stand together, and actually make shit happen.
Very exciting news also comes again as workers have begun a strike at Amazon across the country. Yesterday, we talked to award-winning labor journalist, staff writer for Jacobin Magazine, Alex Press, about the strike. Let's play that interview. All right, folks, you're still listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. I am here with Adam Keller, as always, and joining us today is Alex Press, award-winning journalist and staff writer at Jacobin Magazine. Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, always happy to come on.
So, we wanted to talk to you today about the big Amazon news. Amazon, Teamsters at Amazon have started a nationwide strike. They've unionized 10 facilities. 7 of them are part of the strike, and they're extending pickets all across the country. I actually, not long ago, as we are recording this, got back from a picket right here in Huntsville. And so I guess just as an overview, can you remind people why the Teamsters are striking Amazon right now?
Yeah, so the Teamsters have launched a campaign to organize Amazon. They did this in earnest a couple years ago. 5-10 years ago, there were no efforts to organize Amazon. There were, of course, a few workers here and there who, as any workers anywhere will do, were organizing because the conditions were dire there. But there were no big institutional unions, no media fanfare about organizing. Obviously, jump to today, there are many kind of campaigns. You're constantly hearing about this, whether it's the Amazon Labor Union that organized JFK 8 in Staten Island, the first Amazon warehouse to organize in the United States. There are other efforts. Some have failed, some have not. The Teamsters have gotten these 10 facilities. Now, most of these facilities, the workers who are organizing with the Teamsters are drivers. So without getting way too boring, they are technically not Amazon employees, right? They work for delivery service partners, DSPs, as Amazon calls them. So their paychecks are not signed by Amazon. Thus, Amazon says, hey, we have nothing to do with this. Go bargain with your boss, which is these small companies that, the workers say, hey, look, these companies exist entirely to service you. You make the rules, you set the pace, you set the wages. And, you can ask a boss of a DSP, they'll say the same thing, that they are, they have no bargaining power compared to Amazon. So the workers, the Teamsters all say, Amazon is a joint employer is the term, that Amazon has the legal kind of duty to sit down with these workers and bargain. Amazon's disputing this. The Teamsters gave a deadline, bargain with these workers by December 15th, or we're striking. Obviously, that date has passed. So there are now these workers striking at 7 facilities, as you said.
Interestingly, I will talk about the arrests momentarily in New York, but one of the interviews that Tony Rosario gave from Teamsters Local 804, he mentioned that under CMEX, if a group of employees petition for union recognition claiming that they represent a majority of the employees there, that the company must then either voluntarily recognize or request a union election within 10 days with the NLRB.
Well, the workers here are organizing. They reach majority recognition. All these people right here, they all fought for this. Amazon is saying this isn't happening. Amazon says that we have not reached majority recognition. We filed with the NLRB, we proved it, okay? And at the end of the day, they should be recognizing us. Under CEMEX, Amazon had 2 weeks to call for an election, they did not. This is a union building. They should be negotiating in good faith with these workers at the bargaining table. They refuse to. So we're gonna continue to exercise our rights. Right now, what the cops are doing is unlawful, and I was unlawfully arrested. We were being compliant with the police officers, totally compliant.
They wrongly arrested you.
We were letting the trucks out every 2 to 3 minutes. As we said, one truck would come out every 2 to 3 minutes. They started to set up police barricades. They started to set up police officers. They wanted to let out more than one truck. I continued to walk to use my right. They said I was blocking. I was not blocking. I continued to walk, and I told them the 2 to 3 minutes aren't up.
And apparently, at several of these DSPs that they've recently announced that they're unionizing with the Teamsters, neither the DSP nor Amazon have requested an election from the NLRB, and so therefore these facilities are officially union shops now, right? Am I getting that the legal part of that right?
That's my understanding of it. And, caveat is I am not a labor lawyer. These things are complicated, though. It's funny that Rosario mentioned this. I remember I did an end of the year interview with Rosario at the end of last year. And he was like, you got to pay attention to CMEX. It's going to be important for us with Amazon. So
Yeah.
I imagine that's part of the Teamsters strategy. Though Amazon, for its part, just isn't going to bargain with anybody, right? They will not do it unless forced. I've been saying this a lot over the past 24 hours is, Amazon's disputing that they have to bargain with these workers. They're disputing that their employer, they keep saying, this is an illegal strike. They also aren't bargaining with JFK 8, the workers who now are Teamster affiliated, they're local 1 of the IBT. And those workers, there's no dispute that they are employees. Amazon doesn't dispute that. They're warehouse workers. They're not drivers. They unionized May 1st, 2022. Amazon hasn't even recognized the union, much less sat down to bargain. So it's very hard to kind of take seriously and in good faith, anything Amazon executives do, but certainly the claim that actually they just really believe these are not employees. I think they just really don't want anyone to have a say over their profit model, and certainly not their employees.
The from Amazon's point of view, my assumption is that Amazon doesn't want to request a union election at these DSPs, because then that would be kind of a tacit admission that we are in fact joint employers, right? And the DSPs, I guess, don't care enough to why do you think the DSPs are not requesting an election?
I feel like this is something that I would really just be speculating. I would say, though, that yet another complication here is, and you certainly know this, I'm sure, Jacob, Amazon's response when these DSPs organize, when the workers organize, has been to fail to renew the contract, right? So to basically cut the contract. So that happened first in Palmdale, California. Some 84 drivers there organized, and Amazon said, well, actually, that DSP had really poor performance. We've declined to renew the contract. Of course, the owner itself of the DSP in that case actually had said, I'm fine. I recognize the union. That's fine. These workers do need better conditions, and more bargaining power for them is probably good for me, too. Now in Skokie, Illinois, which is a location that's on strike right now, a similar thing is underway. Those workers at GSP started organizing a few months ago. Amazon once again declined to renew a contract. That GSP was very high performing, so it's harder to make the argument, but Amazon can just do it. They can, it's their purview, their business model, their choices. So that is another complication, and it's certainly something that I imagine is weighing in as far as how DSP owners are dealing with this.
Right. And so I mentioned that I wanted to get to the arrests, and part of the reason I think ostensibly for the arrest is what Amazon is saying, that this is a quote unquote illegal strike. Now, how do you have any idea what they're, because I read that just before we started this interview, and in these times that they were telling in these times that their position on this is that it's an illegal strike. And now how private sector workers have a right to strike in this country. On what basis, even if these employees were not union, they have a right to strike? What is the basis for saying this is illegal, what they're doing?
I have no idea. I mean, you'd have to ask Amazon. Maybe they're saying they have, they would acknowledge they have a right to strike, but shouldn't they be striking outside of the DSP's office or whatever, rather than outside of the warehouse? I mean, that is all one thing. What was going on with the cops, which again is not the most important story. The strike is the most important story. That said, New York was crazy yesterday. Was the police were, there was no basis for some of these arrests. It was basically being said, either you open lanes for Amazon drivers to continue to be able to do their job and exit. Many drivers were still at work. So either you give up on the picket line, or we're just going to arrest all of you. Like, that was just being said by police officers to union members, to union leaders, to local leaders. Even though everyone was on the sidewalk, there were points when they were doing the automated, if you are in the street, you'll be arrested, even as they sort of pushed people in the street. Like, there was just, it was very funny, the images of these workers were holding signs saying, obey the law to Amazon, which is breaking the law.
Right.
NYPD was also breaking the law and violating, First Amendment rights, collective bargaining rights, all of these things. And yet the only people arrested here were Antonio Rosario, and as the kind of images were quite prominently seen, this driver who decided to join the strike, he also was arrested for doing so.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate. Yeah, and we'll play some of the videos, I think, both from you and from Luis Leon from Labor Notes, who wrote the article for In These Times. We'll intersperse some of those videos in this interview when it plays. But what happened with the Amazon driver who was arrested? Walk us through that.
Yeah, so it's funny. This strike started at 6 a.m, so my sense of what time it would have been is actually pretty bad. Maybe 8:30 a.m. During this picket, as I said, many drivers are not members of the union yet, right? They haven't been reached. These are big facilities. Many workers, I will say, they just don't even know what a union is yet. We're still, it's a work in progress. So drivers were, every few minutes, what the NYPD basically had said was like, you have to let a vehicle through every few minutes, which is far less of a volume than that facility normally has, but is, obviously not a full picket. So the members of the picket line were doing that. But with every driver that would be waiting after 2 minutes to cross onto their route, the picketers would be talking to them, giving them literature, and people would be chanting and saying, put it in park, right? Join the picket. And this driver, and I don't want to get his name wrong. Where is it? That you mentioned. Oh no, I can't find it. This driver basically decided to do that. Everyone cheered. There was a lot of discussion. I couldn't hear what he was saying to the picketers. Apparently he was saying to the police, like, the police were trying to get him to start driving again. He was saying, there's people around me, I can't do that. Eventually he stands up and tries to get out of the cab of the van. The police first push him back inside, and people were saying that they even tried to put his seatbelt back on him. which is really an egregious, like, shut up and drive
Yeah.
kind of act. And then he refused, and the police arrested him. People pleaded with them to let him go, but they booked him. He was given, a desk appearance after he was freed, and he went right back to the picket line. He made a little speech. He actually said that he supported the union and had forgotten the strike was starting yesterday, and that when he saw the picket line, he was like, just trying to figure out, was he going to be able to join it, or was it going to be more trouble, because it was a chaotic scene. So he said, they'll be seeing a lot more of me now, because he'll be out on the picket line every day. So he got a warm welcome from the picketers when he came back from jail.
Yeah, I think that would happen if you get arrested on a picket line and you can come back. You'll get a warm welcome. Joe Gernson Cardenas. Joe Gernson Cardenas was his name. But yeah, I mean, that is just incredibly egregious behavior from the cops, and difficult to understand the justification. And of course, we know, that this is like what cops do, but there are a lot of people who kind of don't really conceive of cops as primarily protectors of capital and not really protectors of the peace or whatever. But sure. Was there any conversation on the picket line, about the cops' behavior, or even maybe conversation with the cops who are members ostensibly of a union themselves, right? I mean, was there any any people like, oh wow, that's weird. Why are they? I thought they were protecting me. Was there any of those conversations happening?
I think there were probably a lot of those conversations. As you know, Jacob, you can't hear every conversation happening on a picket line. The police behavior was so extreme that I think, there were certain points where I almost felt bad that the focus was now just entirely on the police rather than on Amazon. So if that goes to say anything, it's that probably everyone was discussing this. I mean, as you said, me and that this is often, workers often meet police as at least as I often say, when you meet cops on a picket line, they're facing you, right? They are not in the labor movement. There are obstacles to it. But, in this case, even I was a little shocked. There are photos, maybe you'll show them. I took one. The cops are linking arms and like to protect the vehicle from the picket. It was so a blatant, yes, cops are just, it's important that capital flows. It was like, this can't be good from a kind of plausible deniability perspective for the cops and for Amazon. The joke now goes, I have an article coming out now, but my friend who's an organizer with the Teamsters, we were joking about that now the NYPD should be considered third-party contractors too, if the drivers are going to be considered that as well, because they're just working straight for Amazon. So,
right.
Yeah. So I'm sure there were discussions of that. There's still ongoing things. Sean O'Brien himself, we don't have to get into in this conversation. He felt the need to put a statement out saying, he doesn't blame the rank and file cops, but certainly the top brass are no different than Amazon. So this is something that was, so crazy that I think everybody has to talk about it in
right.
varying ways.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it didn't seem like they were too conflicted about what they were doing from the videos. They seemed pretty comfortable to me, but
they seem comfortable to me too.
Yeah. And so I guess, refocusing on the strike and the organization of Amazon as an entity to close out this conversation. I mean, what are what are some of the next steps, I guess, for Amazon? Well, before we talk about next steps, I guess let's talk about the year in Amazon organizing, because really, there was that JFK 8 organized a couple of years back, and there was some hope maybe that there would be an avalanche, a snowball effect, kind of like happened at Starbucks, and that just didn't really materialize basically until ALU affiliated with the Teamsters. And now, within 1 year, there have been, half a dozen other places unionized with the Teamsters. And so, how did that, as you're seeing it and reporting on it nationally, how did that materialize? How did those gains happen? And how do you feel about the progress that the Teamsters have made in the organization of Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, we sometimes use the word contagion, right? And certainly it didn't spread like Starbucks spread. But I think there's a broader story about the whole American working class. I mean, we hear that and I hear it all the time. I'm sure you hear it from your friends, and even, where you are in in a fairly anti-union area, you probably hear this occasionally. People are pro-union now. People want unions. The kids all seem to want a union. Things like this, like, why am I reading about a union in the news? I thought those things didn't exist anymore. I think this is part of that. There's been a pandemic shift where conditions got worse. Workers relied on each other. That led to some of this energy from below to organize. Things actually got just materially worse at places like Amazon, right? People were dying in these warehouses from COVID. People were overworked, mandatory overtime, things like this. You can't really put that energy back in the bottle, even if conditions kind of go back to how they were. So I think that was part of it. But, you can't discount that there were, there are individual people making efforts here. At labor notes, for the past several labor notes, there have been kind of private sessions where Amazon workers from all of these different efforts get in the same room for like 5 hours and talk and strategize and share experiences. Labor Notes obviously is an institution that focuses on building those kind of ties and sharing that experience. Workers also are just doing it themselves, right? I mean, I often ask them, are you in touch with this other effort? Are you in touch with this person? They all have each other's numbers. They're all kind of sharing experiences, not only strategy, but what to expect from the boss. Because again, they share an employer, even if their contexts are very different. And so I would say those efforts, are slowly starting to pay off. You add in the Teamsters resources and you start to see a little more momentum. I think that everyone has a long way to go. The Teamsters certainly have a long way to go. But that's not really a surprise to me, I think, as kind of, it's easy to bash efforts because this is like 1% of all Amazon facilities, and it's not even every worker in that facility. But again, having been here for 10 years, I'm like, well, at least, it is more than it was, and people are taking it seriously now. So let's see what is coming down the pike. So I don't know what the future holds, but certainly I think, Amazon, it's important to take a step back and think, like, Amazon has reshaped the entire country. Like, it's reshaped it economically. It's trapped people, not just Amazon workers, but all kinds of people into the bottom rung of the labor market through economic reshuffling of the geography of America. It's shaped it culturally. It's shaped it politically. And there is no other way to start pushing back on that than through these efforts. And so in that sense, I think they are worth paying the attention that we pay to them. And certainly I hope that, the coming days see, many more drivers like the one that joined that strike in Queens yesterday, but also just, there are many Amazon workers on the sidelines right now who are looking at the union movement and saying, is this a viable answer to my issues at work? And it's been an open question. Unions haven't been there for them in the past. And so my hope is that, having the Teamsters be a part of this might actually make this a more viable solution.
What do you see as some of the next steps? And do you think that the Trump administration is going to be a damper on the organization of Amazon? I mean, I know that, Sean O'Brien thinks that he's got a buddy in Donald Trump. And so, what are some of the next steps that need to happen, and what effect, if any, is the Trump administration going to have on that as you see it?
I mean, Jacob, I'm as curious as what you think the next steps are as anyone, because I mean, as we know, nobody knows. As far as the second part of that question, it's interesting, and I've put this question to Sean myself in the past couple of days. We know not just Trump is anti-worker, but in a very concrete sense, the NLRB is going to be majority like employer side lawyers and anti-worker, much more than it's been. It's been very good under Abruzzo, given its extremely limited role in finances. And part of what these workers are relying on as far as the legal side of things, which we know is not everything, you win a union by acting like a union, regardless of what the courts say. That said, the legal side turns upon this joint employer status. You certainly are not going to have a Trump NLRB, ruling that Amazon is a joint employer with these drivers. You're going to see a much more conservative, much more anti-worker NLRB. So what the logic of Sean O'Brien is with this support, it's a question to ask him. I imagine it's, this idea that the right is ascendant and you have to, it's better to make friends than to make enemies with the people in power. I think that's a disputable way of looking at things. But I think things are going to get harder under Trump. Whether that opens up space for people to be more creative, on the rank and file side, it might. People less constrained by the law also are freer to experiment. And so, we'll see as far as that goes. But, the next steps concretely for what these drivers need to do, I wouldn't deign to say. I think there's still conversations being had internally among these drivers and certainly within the Teamsters as well.
Alex Press, award-winning journalist at Jacobin Magazine. Thank you so much for breaking down the Amazon situation for us. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yep. And just as one more illustration of, somebody asked earlier why Amazon workers are striking, why Amazon Teamsters are striking. And, I mentioned that the strike is over Amazon's failure to bargain with the union. But also, they do have economic demands that they are going to be bringing to the table once Amazon comes to the table. But the Teamsters have put out some information about the conditions that Amazon workers work in. 56% of workers at Amazon have had problems paying their bills. 53% experience food insecurity, and 48% experience housing insecurity. And so the idea that we're talking about the biggest, most profitable, one of the most profitable companies in the world, and their workers have those kinds of conditions is really just frankly unacceptable. And there's this clip that More Perfect Union put out that's a really good illustration of like why you should be on the side of Amazon workers. This is a clip taken in a Blue Origin facility, but it was of a Blue Origin worker talking to Jeff Bezos as he walks through the facility. And the real revelatory stuff is going to be on the screen. So after the clip is done playing, I'll share with you what you missed if you were listening to us audio only. But let's play this clip of, frankly, this kind of loser fella talking to Jeff Bezos.
Hey.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hey, you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate
that.
I've been in the business 36 years and
really appreciate that.
I'll tell you now, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, United Technologies, I worked for all three for more than 10 years. It's the best company I ever worked for.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to tell me that.
I will. This will be my last job.
All right.
I don't have to look anymore anywhere.
Thank you. That's so nice.
That's always good to hear.
What a sweet thing to say.
That's awesome. And now I'll slip him the 20 on the way out.
I know. I didn't even tip him. I mean, that's...
Oh, this is such a great place to work. I love you so much, Mr. Bezos. Your shoes look very nice. I'm so happy to be here. Really, really excited to be here, Mr. Bezos. And by the end of their conversation, which lasted approximately 30 seconds, this guy has made about 49 cents, and Bezos has made $14,000 in 30 seconds. If you bring down how much each of them make, how much you make per second, after 30 seconds is over, this worker guy has made about 49.50 cents, and Jeff Bezos has made 14,000. That is why you should support these Amazon workers as they're on strike. And workers at Blue Origin should also unionize and should also take more of the value that they create from the leeches at the top, like Jeff Bezos and the other shareholders at Amazon. I don't know, Adam, if you had anything else to add to that, but
No, I had nothing to add. I'm good. Yeah, I don't want to say what I think about Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
I probably should keep that off the air, just for legal reasons.
Right, of course. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.